Can you still use an iPhone 3G in 2024? In this video, we're going to try and answer that question. Hi, this is Josh with Retro TV One Tech, and today, like I said, we're going to look at this iPhone 3G. This is the second generation iPhone ever made, and we're going to see if you can still use this device as a daily phone or a daily driver, as they say, in 2024. So, let's get started. So I hope you enjoyed that iconic slide to unlock there on the lock screen. I really missed that. Let's try it one more time. It's just so satisfying. I know the face unlock is more secure and everything, but I just really missed that slide to unlock. So let's see what you can actually do on this device. You can see a lot of the apps are similar to what we have now, so that's cool. You recognize the weather app. Like if I want to check the weather right now, let's click on that and see what we can do here. Update failed. That's not really working. So I guess the server that they had it connected to is no longer available. It looks like it was on Yahoo at the time, so that's not working. Okay, let's try something else. My home button's not great on here either. Let's see if we can just go over to the App Store. Maybe we can download a new weather app or something. Takes a while to load. Oh, cannot connect to the iTunes Store. So even Apple has cut off this device from the iTunes Store. So we can't download any apps on this, at least not without any jailbreak trickery, which we might try some later. What about iTunes? Can we download maybe some songs or TV show or something like that? Let's see. Oh, same result. Cannot connect to iTunes Store, so that doesn't work. I do see the YouTube app up here, and this was actually a stock YouTube app. It actually came with iOS. Of course, now it's a standalone download directly from Google, but this was a partnership between Apple and Google here. So let's load up this YouTube app. I love how it's like a TV. That's pretty cool. So let's see if we can load up YouTube. You can actually see the little menu icons down here. That's pretty neat. Most viewed, search, favorites, more, all kinds of things here. So let's see if we can load something. Cannot connect to YouTube. So again, server configuration, security, certificates, whatever it is, it's preventing us from connecting to YouTube. So that app doesn't work either. And I can't, even if I go to search, I guess I searched for dogs last, I don't know. But either way, yeah, that's not going to work. All right, what else can we do? Let's check the Maps app. Maybe we can see where we're going or where we've been. Who knows? Let's see if that'll actually load. You can see this is Maps by Google, and that actually does work. So the Maps app actually does work. That's pretty cool. Let's see if we can zoom in on Disney here. Lake Buena Vista. Cannot determine location. So the GPS doesn't work. But I can still zoom in on a map location, and it does actually load. You can see it does zoom in correctly and everything else. And we should be able to do directions and things like that. So the map app seems pretty functional. So that's good. It is an older app version, but it does still connect to Google and it does still work. So that's actually interesting. Google supporting Apple's products better than Apple is here because Apple's cut off the App Store and everything else. I'm actually surprised they did that, but I guess it probably costs money to maintain when the number of people using this device is probably so small it's not even worth worrying about. I did have one app installed on here before I cleaned this off, and that was 977 Music. It was a cool app that I used to use just for mowing the lawn and stuff like that and listening to music. But I tried this earlier and could not get anything to load here. It just sits here on connecting and doesn't do anything. So that's unfortunate. So that app even isn't working. So far we've gotten the Maps app to work, and that's about it. What about the camera? Takes a while, but it is working, and you can kind of see the table that I'm working on here. So not fantastic, but it does work, and you can see if I pick it up, you can see some of my stuff behind me there. So definitely the camera's not great, and you can see it's actually photos only. So the pictures are not fantastic, and the lighting in here is not the best either. I have it kind of dim so you can see the screen here, but you can see it does take pictures. They're pretty fuzzy, but it does work. They're 2 megapixels, so a lot of the pictures we took back in that time period are not the greatest, but they do serve as some memories. The Photos app works. All right, well, what about Safari? All right, it took a long time, but it did finally load Google. All right, so we should be able to search for things. Let's just search for iPhone. And you can tell there's definite lag when you're typing. And it's actually only a 400 megahertz processor We'll go over the specs here in just a bit. So that's why a lot of this stuff just takes so long to render. The other thing is it only has 128 megabytes of RAM, so there's just not much memory for anything. So we'll go over the full specs here in just a bit, but you can see it's still loading, but I can scroll down the page. Now, if you scroll down too fast, you get that checkerboard pattern here. What if I try and load YouTube through Safari? You can tell Google works for most things, so that's good. Google is pretty optimized for older devices, so you'll be able to search for things and find, things to look at and surf the web and things, but it's really, really slow. So it is possible, it's just not a great experience, as you might expect. I mean, as of now, the device is 16 years old, so obviously it's definitely in need of some updates on that. And when I say 16 years old, it actually did come out in 2008. All right, I've cut out quite a bit of the loading time, but we are still waiting for this to do something. All right, it's been several minutes, and this has not loaded anything yet. So I think it's safe to say that YouTube on Safari does not work. Let's click on videos and just see if we can play a video from that menu. All right, so again, it's been several minutes, and that didn't load anything either. So I think that a lot of that has to do with newer versions of HTML5 and things like that, newer commands in HTML that aren't supported here in this early version of Safari. Probably also some security settings that weren't present in this version of Safari. So there might be some SSL and some certificates that aren't present in this older version, so it just doesn't work. All right, so let's go ahead and go out of Safari. So Safari works, but not fantastically. And again, my home button doesn't work fantastically either, but it's an older device. So let's go over to iPod. Maybe we can do something there. And it takes a second, but that actually does work. Let's see if we can play something from our Disney playlist here. Let's see, what should we play? Ooh, the Epcot Center entrance loop. Always love that. And that actually does work. Speaker's not too loud, but it works. And I think this one has cover flow if you turn it to the side. Yeah, so we can page through the covers of these albums. So that actually is kind of cool. Kind of a cool little feature there. So that works really well. Again, the speaker's not great, even if we turn it all the way up, but not bad. All right, so let's go out of there. Let's see if it'll play some videos. So I did actually load some videos in here. It was very difficult to get them in through iTunes, but I did finally get them in there. There's only certain ones that it will accept, and iTunes will actually tell you if the device can play the videos or not. So let's go ahead and just push play here and see what happens. Actually got to turn it sideways there. So this is like Disney Resort TV here, the top 7. That works pretty well. So video playback works fine. This is the top 7 must-dos. And if you're wondering why all the Disney stuff, if you haven't seen our main channel, which is Resort TV 1, we cover all things Disney World here in Orlando, Florida. And so that's why I've got all the Disney stuff on there. And of course, it does cover playlists. I've got the favorite Disney music playlist, and you can pull all kinds of playlists over from iTunes. So this is still a fully functional iPod, basically a fully functional iPod Touch. So you could very easily load this up with all your music, or at least 8 gigabytes worth of your music, or less, I guess. And it does have a regular headphone jack here. So you could actually plug in regular headphones. It does have an early version of Bluetooth that probably would work with certain headphones, probably not all of them. Definitely wouldn't work with AirPods, I don't think. But it would, you could plug in a pair of wired headphones or earbuds, and it would work just fine. In fact, I used to use it for that. I used to go around in the yard and mow in the yard, and I would just use this because I wasn't as worried, if it got damaged at all, because it was pretty old, and it's still pretty old. So the Notes app works fine. You can add a note just like you always used to be able to, and I love that it's like a yellow legal pad, so that's pretty fun. You can just start typing, and it just looks like notes. So there you go. And by the way, the date is wrong. It says like January 3rd or something. I think the battery was dead for a long time, but it does still work. Let's see, contacts are in here. So yeah, there's a lot of things here that do work, but a lot that don't. And in the mail app, we'd have to set something up that probably would still work. I don't want to be showing my email accounts, but I would assume that some of that would work. A mobile me is not a thing that was replaced by iCloud. That was an old Apple thing, but some of those are actually still valid services. So that's basically all this can do. I mean, you've got the calendar app, the stocks app. I did try that earlier. It doesn't work either. It'll try and retrieve the chart and it'll say error because it's connecting to some Yahoo server. And the clock app works. It's got like a world clock and all that kind of stuff and alarms and all that. So that does actually work. But that's about it. And I guess you do have the calculator and voice memos. So those do work. Let's try the voice memo real quick. That's kind of cool. It's actually looks like a microphone there. And it's even got a VU meter. This is a test of the iPhone 3G's recording capabilities. All right, so let's play that back. How do I? There we go. Okay, so let's play that back. This is a test of the iPhone 3G's recording capabilities. So that's not too bad. Not too bad. It's kind of soft because I was kind of far away from the device when I recorded it. But yeah, so that does work. So that memo recorder app works fine, voice memos. And then, of course, the calculator, it works like a calculator. And just like now, if you turn it to the side, it does go into scientific calculator mode, which is cool. So that works just fine. And those are, standalone, non-internet enabled apps anyway. Now, they do have little folders here. iOS 4 introduced folders. Believe it or not, in iOS 3, there were no folders unless you had a jailbreak. So anyway, that's basically all you can do with this. So to answer the question, can you use a stock iPhone 3G in 2024? The answer is no. You can't use it for much else other than basically as an iPod. It's not any good really as a camera. It does take pictures still, but they're not good pictures. Safari barely works, and none of the other apps, I guess Maps does work. There's no GPS in the Maps. The GPS doesn't work without some type of a cellular connection, I believe. So yeah, so it works partially. But as far as using it as a daily phone, it's just not possible. Nothing's supported anymore. But there are other ways around that we can show you later where we can do a little bit more on it if we just do a little bit of hacking and trickery. So here we are on the About page in Settings, and let's talk about some of the specs of this device. I mentioned we were running iOS 4. Specifically, we're running the last version of iOS that was available for this phone, iOS 4.2.1. And so you can't upgrade it past this. They just completely stopped supporting it. Now, this is one of the phones that they supported for the least amount of time. After that, they really have been supporting the phones through several different versions of iOS. I guess this one had technically, 2 or 3 versions. I'm not sure. I think the first version of it was iOS 2, I believe. So I'm not exactly sure. I think we got 2 and 3 and 4 for this one. So maybe 2 or 3 different major versions. You can also see it says AT&T 9.0 there. And that means that it's actually locked to AT&T as a carrier. This was a device that didn't work on any other carrier. So if you wanted to use it on like T-Mobile or you wanted to use it on Verizon or even Sprint was actually still a carrier at the time, you had to have it jailbroken and unlocked. And that was a big deal back at the time because people didn't always want to use AT&T, and it actually didn't work very well because everybody was using it on the iPhone. So anyway, also you can see the capacity, 6.9 gigabytes. It's 8 technically, but part of that's used for the operating system and, some reserve storage space. So it actually, doesn't have a lot of room on it, and I don't have a lot on it right now either. But let's talk about some of the other specs of the device as we go back out to the home screen here. Okay, my home button is not fantastic. So as I mentioned, this device actually has a 412 megahertz ARM11 processor. It's got a PowerVR GPU. That's based on Apple's old PowerVR architecture. But something else really interesting, as far as memory, I said it has 8 gigabytes of storage on it, but the RAM is only 128 megabytes, and that was one of the worst parts of this phone. It constantly ran out of memory, and so that's why this phone never really had proper multitasking. If you double-click the home button, basically you can assign an action to it, but it doesn't have any multitasking at all, so you can't just jump between apps, at least not on this version of iOS. As far as the screen goes, it is, of course, the pre-Retina days, so it's just a standard TFT LCD panel. It's 3.5 inches, 320 by 480 pixels, and that's a 3:2 ratio. So it's a lot different ratio, a lot more close to square ratio as opposed to the really long and skinny devices of today. And then it's also 165 pixel density. So let's compare that to the specs of my daily driver phone, an iPhone 13 Pro Max. So the iPhone 13 Pro Max has basically a hexa-core CPU with two 3.23 gigahertz Avalanche cores. Those are the fast ones, and then four slower cores, 1.82 gigahertz. So it's a six-core processor compared to the iPhone 3G there that's a single-core processor. As far as memory goes, it's actually got 6 gigabytes of RAM on it, no matter what model you have. 6 gigabytes of RAM. And then the display is Super Retina. It's 1,000 nits brightness, but the pixel density is 458 ppi, whereas the one on the iPhone 3G is actually only 161. So you can kind of see the difference in the text if you look here. Even if I zoom in, it's not fantastic compared to over here. You can also see too, my iPhone 13 Pro Max is actually adjusting for the light. So yeah, anyway, you can just see how much more clear the newer screen is, of course. And the size is just kind of unbelievable how much difference the size is. So let's take a better look at how much different these devices are in size. So here you can see a little better comparison of the devices with the screens off. Sorry about any smudges you see on the screens. I tried to get them clean. And of course you can see the biggest difference in the screens. This iPhone 3G, the screen was not a very big percentage of the device, whereas on the iPhone Pro, the 13 Pro Max, it's basically the whole device is the screen. So let's turn them over on the back. And you'll be able to see the size difference even more dramatically here between the two. Of course, you've got the triple cameras on the 13 Pro Max, and on the 3G, it's just the one tiny little camera. Look at the difference in cameras here. Actually, this sensor here is bigger than the camera on the iPhone 3G, and the flash actually is even bigger than the camera. And you can see this one's a little scratched up. It was used without a case quite a bit after it wasn't my daily driver phone anymore. In fact, it even got sent to some friends who didn't have a phone and things like that. So it's actually had a long life, but it still works. And so I guess that's one thing to say about these older phones. They really are reliable, and they're made pretty well. So that's the good news. So as far as connectors and stuff go, of course, this is a 13, so it's still got the Lightning connector, and then the iPhone 3G actually has a 30-pin connector, which is the old connector that they had for the iPods and things like that. So this one is the connector that only goes one direction, that was replaced later by a Lightning connector on the iPhone 5. So anyway, that's a good comparison of the two devices. And I'm sure if I had a 15, I could compare that. But the 13 is pretty similar in size and things like that. So what if I wanted to use this device for more apps and things, and basically use it as more than just an iPod? Is there anything else I could do? Well, actually, it turns out there is. We can install something called WhiteDoor, a firmware update for this. It's basically a custom firmware. It's not even maintained anymore. You have to kind of dig through the internet to find it. But it basically makes this have the equivalent of iOS 7, which is a lot more modern, of course, than iOS 4 that's on here now. So it might allow us to install some apps and things like that. It will also jailbreak the device so we can actually install apps manually. So doing that, we might be able to find some more apps that'll work. We might even be able to find like a working YouTube app and things like that. So we'll see. But one of the things we won't be able to do very easily unless we find the right carrier is be able to connect to a cellular network. That's because most of the carriers have shut down their 3G networks and even their edge networks. So basically this phone's going to be a Wi-Fi only device. But I'm going to try and install WhiteDoor, and I'll come back on when I've got it installed. I'm not going to show you the whole process. There are several videos on YouTube that can show you how to do that. So I'll just come back when it's installed. We'll take a look at the differences and some of the features that are added, and we'll go from there. Before we do, I want to show you there's no swipe down from the top. There's no swipe up from the bottom. There's no double tapping the home button. Double tapping the home button just goes to the search. That doesn't go to the multitasking or anything like that. All right, so let's get WhiteDoor installed. All right, so we finally got WhiteDoor installed. It was not easy. I had to go through Internet Archive and all kinds of places to get all the right files, but we finally got it done. And as you can see, the interface looks completely different. Even the slide to unlock is different. It's more like iOS 7. So this is basically like having iOS 7 with basically skinned on top of iOS 3.13, which is the best operating system for these iPhone 3Gs. So as you can see, it's pretty snappy. There we go. Get a little bit better view with a little better exposure on the screen there, and you can immediately see that the app icons are different. They've been updated to the iOS 7 look, which is a little bit more modern, and some of these icons continue to be the same icons as what we have today on the phones. They really haven't changed that much. You can see the YouTube icon is different. The Photos icon is different. Pretty much, I think almost all the icons are different. Because remember, the Notes app was like a piece of yellow legal paper, basically. And now it's kind of this style. Now, if I swipe to the right there, you can see I have Cydia, which is the Jailbreak app. So that shows that I am jailbroken. I also have a terminal, so I can even load this up and see a real terminal on the device here. And there you go. Oh, it went away. Well, anyway, it's supposed to be, there it is again. It's supposed to be a command prompt, basically. And you can run kind of advanced commands and things here from this prompt. So that works out really nicely. But let's see if the App Store works now that we are jailbroken and we are on this white door software. And you can see I'm still in airplane mode and I still have Wi-Fi connected. Nope, still unable to load. Please check your internet connection. So that is unfortunate. There used to be, when White Door was new, back in, I believe, 2013, 2014, when this had come out, this phone was already 6 years old at that point. There used to be kind of an app time machine type feature on this where you could download older versions of apps directly from the App Store. I think now it's just like a certificate issue. So you can't load anything. You can't go to home. You can't really do anything on this. If I go to downloads, current downloads, settings, auto install of app, auto delete IPA files. So yeah, I don't know a whole lot about this. Deb installer, completed installing all packages. So I think if we put some Deb files, those are basically jailbroken apps, into a certain folder, they will auto install with this, which is cool. But unfortunately, looks like none of the rest of it works. I'm sorry about some of the lines and things on the screen. These devices have kind of like polarized displays, just like a laptop computer, so it's pretty hard to get a clear picture on the screen sometimes, but I think you can see it well enough. So yeah, so basically nothing's happening when I go through to this. I don't know if search works. Let's just search. Let's just search for like something simple like a Google app or something. All right, so fast forward quite a bit. I've had that sitting there for a long time, and it hasn't done anything. So I'm guessing that doesn't work. So I guess App Store, at least for now, is not working. Leave me a comment if you know how to get it working, but I have not been able to figure out how to get it working. If I type or click on music, that's a little bit different. So that's the iPod, and you can put content and things on there. I didn't put any songs on there, but I showed you earlier how that worked. So no content, so it won't let me tap on anything, but that works basically the same way. It's basically the iPod app. Videos should be the same thing. It's just separated now. So we can download from iTunes, but we can't really download from iTunes because it won't connect. A couple other things, though, that this White Door does really cool and differently than just the stock iOS 3.13 or iOS 4, which is what I had before, is it actually has some features like the control center. And iOS 3.13 doesn't have this, and it does control the brightness and things like that. You can see it's not smooth, but it controls these through like jailbreak tweaks, basically. Jailbreak, again, means just to hack the phone. So it has all these little controls, even for volume and playback, Wi-Fi, airplane mode, Bluetooth, even do not disturb, orientation lock, all these things. And this was the iOS 7 control panel, basically, so that's pretty cool. Now, of course, compare that to the modern control center on iOS 17. And yeah, it looks a lot different now, but they had the same design from iOS 7 here on the left for a long time. So until they changed to this more modular design on the current versions of iOS. So that works pretty well. I don't think anything happens if I swipe down from the top, but one cool thing that does happen is it actually has multitasking. Remember, iOS 3 did not have multitasking at all, so I can double click the home button there. My home button's a little bit weak there, but I can double click the home button and I can actually scroll through the apps, and I can go back to previously used apps and things. So you say I can go back to the videos app and so on and so forth. And all the standard apps work just fine. Like calculator, you can see that's got a different design on it. And clock looks a little bit different as well. By the way, my time is off right now because I didn't set my time zone or anything like that. So it still says Cupertino, which is basically on the Pacific time. Now, one other really cool feature that this White Door has is in the camera. So the camera app loads up very, very similarly. It takes a little bit. You can see it's actually just showing the table that I've got this sitting on now. But one addition is video. A lot of people don't remember, and I mentioned this earlier, the iPhone 3G does not have video. But if I tap on this, it actually loads a whole separate app. It's kind of an embedded app. It's called Cycorder, and it's basically a video recording app with a jailbreak or for jailbreak phones. So I do have to rotate to portrait mode there. All right, so let's do a little test video on this and see how it works. There we go, it's recording. Just showing my little table back there. See my Back to the Future DeLorean transformer that Liam got for me. And my latest Toshiba computer there. The one that was featured in my ultimate retro laptop video. And some various characters back there. But yeah, so you can see if I pan back and forth or go up and down a little bit, the frame rate is definitely not 30 frames a second. Because the frame rate on this video is 30 frames a second. So you can definitely see that it's not full frame rate, full speed. Another thing is, one of the reasons I think that this phone actually never had native video recording support on the iPhone 3G is because the processor wasn't fast enough to handle it. Now, when the 3GS came out with a faster processor, it actually was fast enough to handle video at 30 frames a second. All right, so let's try and play back that video that I just took. So you see it brings up a little dialogue menu there. I've got some various videos that I've taken, so let's just see what it looks like and what it sounds like. There we go, it's recording. Just showing my little table back there. See my Back to the Future DeLorean transformer that Liam got for me. Volume's not very loud, but it doesn't look too bad considering. Computer there, the one that was featured in my ultimate retro laptop video, and some various characters back there. But yeah, so you can see if I pan back and forth or go up and down a little bit, the frame rate is definitely not 30 frames a second. Now the Moore pattern on the video actually isn't present in real life when I'm watching. That's just that polarization camera thing, so you can see the little patterns and stuff. It actually looks really clear in person. It's just really, really hard to get rid of that. You can tell every once in a while when I move it, it goes away. But yeah, either way, the biggest thing is the quality, of course, is low, and the frame rate is 15 frames a second. But yeah, pretty interesting. All right, and let's check out a few other things here. If I click on the YouTube app, it's basically just a reskinning. Still cannot connect to YouTube. So that's a no-go, unfortunately. The weather app still doesn't work. It's just a reskinning. So there you can see Maps actually does work. Well, let's open Cydia, the main Jailbreak app, and see what we can do there. There it goes. You can already see there's problems with the colors and fonts, and of course unable to load. It can't even load the Cydia main page. I think there's some problem with secure server or SSL certificates or something on this version of iOS. I read a little bit about it trying to figure it out, but I never did figure anything out. Now what it's actually doing up here, and you can't really see it on the screen because the text is so light, is that it's trying to update the sources. Cydia has different servers that it loads packages and things from, but it's trying to load those and refresh those, and of course it's not able to do that. I was able to install a few tweaks and a few apps and things, like I was able to install this Apple file conduit, but I tried to install AppSync because I was going to try and install some games and just show you some older games, but I could not get that to work. I tried several different ways, several different times, for a few hours actually, and it just did not work no matter what I tried. So that was frustrating. So Cydia really doesn't do anything anymore. So it's crazy. All this stuff is dependent on the internet, and there's some kind of a problem with the SSL or certificates or something about loading web pages and things in this version of iOS. Because remember, like I said, White Door is based on iOS 3.13. And so I think maybe if I jailbroke it in the latest iOS available for this phone, which is 4.21, it might work. I have no idea. But either way, this definitely doesn't work. It's cool to load Cydia, and it's kind of cool, to see the old school look of everything, but I remember having this when this device was new. I actually had it jailbroken, but unfortunately does not work anymore. All right, well, I was going to try and reinstall iOS 3.1.3, but as you can see by the computer sitting here and the phone that's restoring, I had some difficulty doing that. I've tried several times to get it to restore, so I'm going to keep working with it and maybe post an update video at some point, but as you can see, it is difficult using these devices in 2024. I mean, this phone came out in 2008, so it's over 16 years ago, so it's no surprise that it's difficult to use. So to answer the question, can you use an iPhone 3G in 2024? The answer is mostly no, unfortunately. You can use it for an iPod, it'll play music, and actually I used to do that. I used to just put in the earbuds and take it outside and mow the lawn, and I wasn't as concerned, if it got broken or anything like that. But now at this point, it's kind of a classic, so I don't do that anymore. And so it's just fun to kind of play around with it. So I hope I can get it restored again. These devices can be cantankerous when you're dealing with DFU modes and restores and all these kind of things. Sometimes they just don't accept certain types of firmware and stuff like that. So, but either way, and by the way, I'm using this laptop because I had to use an older version of iTunes. My desktop computer, my main computer, has a version of iTunes that's too new. So I have this older laptop that's got an older version of iTunes on it that I'm trying to use to restore. So we'll see what happens. But either way, the answer is pretty much no. You really can't use an iPhone 3G in 2024. There's a few things you can do with it. I mean, even the Maps app works and things like that. It'll load a few websites, but it really won't even play YouTube videos. You can't even check the weather on it really unless you went to a website. So it's just pretty limited as far as what you can do. I mean, the photos on it are pretty terrible, but we knew that even back in 2008, we knew they weren't fantastic. And a lot of people in 2008 still used, actual digital cameras because the image quality was so much better. And the only reason you'd really want to take a picture with your iPhone was just because it was in your pocket all the time, not because it had good quality. They were very grainy even in good daylight. So, it's just because the technology in 2008 was just that much further behind where we are now 16 years later. So again, it's no surprise, but it is just pretty interesting to see what can and can't be done with them. I actually messed around with this a few years ago, and I wish I made this video a few years ago, and you could do a lot more with it at that point. But now, even just a few years later, things are not working, certificates have been revoked, things like that. And it's all in the name of security, so I get it. I don't blame Apple or anybody else for revoking these certificates. But, either way, definitely can't really use the iPhone 3G in 2024. Leave me a comment, let me know what you think. Let me know if you have a way to get any of this stuff working. I did see some jailbreak tweaks about fixing the App Store on some of these older devices, but I couldn't get it to work. So leave me a comment, let me know if you have any ideas for making this work. Maybe I'll make a part 2 and mess around with this a little bit more. It is kind of ironic to me. Oh, it looks like it actually restored. That's cool. It is kind of ironic to me that, this device is so much harder to mess around with than even like some of these older laptops that I use, this Toshiba. It's actually, I can connect this to my network. I can do all kinds of things with it. I can even load web pages and stuff on it. So even a computer that's much older, this computer came from 2000, so it's another 8 years older than this phone, and it's easier to use, than this iPhone. And a lot of it's because, these are powered by proprietary software and things like that. So anyway, bottom line is it was fun to play around with it. I'm going to keep it because it was my first iPhone ever. I didn't actually ever get the original one, but it was just fun to play around with this today. I hope you enjoyed it, and leave me a comment. Let me know what you thought, and we'll see you in the next one. Hey again, really quick update. Right after I finished saying goodbye on this video, the phone actually finished restoring, so I wanted to show you. It is actually restored to iOS 4.2.1 after several tries. It took me over an hour to get it back to this state. I also wanted to apologize that in the previous clip that I had cut my head off. I didn't check where my head was there. So anyway, it's kind of funny you've got this. So I hope you enjoyed that and laughed at it a little bit. But either way, this has been super fun, and I'm just glad I've got it back into working order as such as it is. I mean, it's obviously not something I can use, but either way, it is working again. So that's good. So for now, enjoy that tech and keep it retro.